So the service rig just survived a, I don't know, 1,600-mile trip that it was never intended to take. The observant among you will notice that those are not the wheels and tires that this rig left with. She had a bit of a rough time on her voyage. So I took her up north for the holidays because I left in that rig and we got a few miles down the road and the driver front caliper locked up on us when we hit a bump. So I don't know what that's about. I'm gonna have to investigate that. So we came back, and the only other big cabin rig, 4-door rig we have is this one. And we were taking the dog, so, you know, hard to fit a dog and a couple people in an El Camino, so we didn't do that. Anyway, she's survived the trip, but tremendously loud on the road. I don't know if any of you have ever driven, you know, a 1-to-1 transmission that's no overdrive with a 411 rear, but it is noisy and the exhaust is not good. It's not tuned great. I still haven't had a chance to tune it, haven't got around to it, but you know, you let off the gas and it burbles and pops and backfires and bangs because I think she might be running a little rich. I'm not sure. I gotta investigate that. Something is not right and happy with the engine and the tuning. I didn't replace the exhaust manifold gaskets on this side, and I should have. But looks like we got a little rain while we were gone. Wheels and tires. So she had the old wheels and tires on her, and I didn't have time to do anything about that, or money or inclination, because tires are expensive. And yeah, so we got about 5 miles from our destination and that tire lost a whole bunch of tread. Didn't pop, but she lost some tread. Yeah, so this happened on a 800-mile trip. Fun times, but the tire didn't blow. Anyway, shout out to Tires Plus in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, because they, the day before Christmas, hooked us up with some new tires, took care of these wheels, cleaned them up a little bit for us so they could actually mount the tires on them. These wheels were pulled out of a barn, old and rusty. That tire there was found in a ditch alongside the road in New York that it had been in for quite some time, and the wheel was just completely shot. And that tire has an 2002 date code on it. And they said, yeah, it's still pliable. It should work if we can save the bead. And they did. And they put it on that wheel, the old rusty barn wheel. And the 2 wheels in the front are old rusty barn wheels. And they cleaned them up enough to make them work. And 2 new tires in the front. That was the ditch tire. And this one over here was the only new tire on the truck. So this is the only one from the original set. So we got a load full of old Power King tires in here that, you know, dry rotted and definitely shouldn't have been driven on, but they were. Got another wheel back there for the matching set. Oh, and also I didn't have a jack or anything with me, so I had to put that really old spare on with like the Jeep bottle jack that I had thrown in the truck. But I'm glad I did because it worked. I just barely, but it worked. It did the trick. This thing is impossible to overheat. I can't even get the engine to run like a normal temperature, and I can't get any heat out of it. And it was cold up north. And the drive up north, I think my legs and feet were going numb. And the dog was shivering, and it was just bad because at highway speed, you cannot get any heat out of the heater. If you sit and idle a while, it would start to put out a little bit of heat. Not much. Anyway, that was pretty miserable. I did replace the thermostat. I had initially put a 160 in because I didn't know what sort of condition anything was in, and that's where what I had, and that's where I started. So when I was up there, I bought a 180-degree thermostat, popped that in the parking lot. So here we are in the hotel parking lot. So as I mentioned before in a previous video, I use these reusable gaskets You have an aluminum frame with a rubber insert, and you can reuse them. Well, I mean, this has been on here for a while and clearly reusable, so you just pop your new thermostat in, and that's easy enough. Just drain your coolant into a properly approved container. Yep. So let's take a look at the new thermostat I got. I just snagged one up. I usually put in these high flow thermostats. This is a 180 degree high flow, so we'll put that in, and hopefully that will help our heat issue. We'll get a little bit more heat out of this. I also got to tighten the power steering belt. It's squeaking something awful up here in the cold. And we'll add more coolant. And I also realized I have a transmission leak. She's been marking her territory. That is not engine oil, and I did just check the engine oil. That is transmission oil, so we'll crawl into there and tighten those bolts as well. So I got the Harbor Freight temp gun, but I didn't get any batteries for it. So it's Christmas Eve. Now the battery search begins. I have to find a 9-volt battery somewhere. I checked with the hotel front desk. They don't have any. Nobody uses that stuff anymore. Well, here we go. I can't check temperatures. The temp gauge did come up a little bit. That's where it was sitting when I turned it off. And that's higher than it was before. Of course, the temp gauge is grossly out of calibration, but if it is running a little higher, maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. Let's see if we can get some heat out of it. I don't know. I mean, it's warm air, but we'll see. I'll get the temp gun and figure this out about the battery. So she's idling here. Got my temp gun. So right at the temp sender, it's 185. At the thermostat, it is right down there below the thermostat, 164. So the heater hoses, I couldn't check this before because I didn't have a temp gun, 110 going out and 126 going in. I don't know if that's enough to get heat or not. I gotta let it sit here and see if it warms up anymore now it has a higher thermostat in it. But the thermostat wouldn't even be open yet. It's at 160 right there, but at least the other one would have been partially open at that point, so it should let it gather more heat. I don't know. We're gonna find out. Got a little bit more heat out of it, but still not enough. So factory is 195 degrees for this engine, in case you were wondering. Anyway, aftermath of this trip, if I ever take this on a long trip again, it's gonna get a good deal of work first. Like, it needs a different axle ratio, more highway long legs in it. I mean, the truck, mechanical wise, just did fantastic. The transmission is leaking a little bit from the rear drain bolt, and I tightened it up in the parking lot, and it was still has a drip kind of leak. We're gonna look at that and see how much fluid we lost. I don't know. It holds like 4.5 quarts, and I was checking the temperature with a temperature gun every stop, and it wasn't getting hot. So that's a good sign. You can see the rear of the bed got tore up a little bit more when the tires started losing tread and throwing rubber everywhere. But that's fine because I don't care about this bed. It's an old rusty piece of junk. Overall, I am impressed with how this rig did on a spur of the moment trip like that, just out of the blue, for being this old. Anyway, mechanically, she's in great shape. We used both fuel tanks and everything. The passenger side fuel tank calibration is a little bit off. I'm not sure to how calibrate that. I'll look it up and we'll go into that in maybe just a quick video if anyone is interested in the future. If I can find anything, I'm not sure. Other gauge calibration. The temperature gauge is still not calibrated correctly. I've been checking with a temp gun and it still reads low. The oil pressure gauge just goes 0 and it goes to 30 and nothing in between when you rev the engine or anything. I have a feeling the calibration is off on that. Speedometer calibration is way off. At 100 mile an hour, you're going 68. So it's, you know, like 80, you're going 60, 61. So as you can tell, that's significantly bad. Drivability, it wasn't too bad. It did the job that it needed to do in a pinch. And it managed to bring back some parts with it, so that's good. So overall, I'm pleased. We get this thing unloaded and recover from the aftermath of this trip. Guys, never turn down a free ditch tire because you never know when it's going to save you. That's the moral of that story. Anyway, thank you guys at Tires Plus, because without them being open right before Christmas and being around and being willing to work with me to make these things work, we probably would have been stranded. So thanks a lot, guys. If you made it this far in the video, we appreciate you watching. We appreciate all of your input, comments, questions. We really appreciate subscriptions. Helps the channel grow. Any likes, comments, questions you have, leave them down there below. And as always, thanks for watching.